Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Idahoan Show. I've spoken before about the enigma of rural EDC, how in a rural setting there's a lot of situations that can come up where a typical urban EDC handgun just isn't going to provide the accuracy or in some cases the firepower that you need. Ideally, what we would have would be something with the size footprint of a typical handgun, but the firepower and the long-distance precision of something like a Target model AR-10. But, of course, that doesn't really exist. And so, again, as I've said before, I think our solution to rural EDC is going to involve a minimum of 3 guns. A primary weapon that gives you the accuracy and the firepower to deal with the majority of situations you might encounter in a rural setting, but is also compact enough to have close at hand most of the time. But then you still need a backup gun, so you've got at least something to carry when it's not realistic to carry your primary weapon. And then you'll also still need probably a larger rifle of some kind to take care of that minority of situations for which your primary weapon isn't adequate, even though you'd only carry that rifle when you know you're going to need it. Now, of those 3, there's a lot of micro pistols and a lot of rifles out there that could potentially fit the supporting roles, and we've talked a little bit about pistols for the backup gun role in a previous episode. But the bigger challenge is finding something to fit that primary weapon role, something that has enough firepower and enough accuracy and is still compact enough to even fit the majority of rural EDC situations. So that's where this thing comes in. Now, this is sort of an interim solution, a work in progress, if you will. It's definitely not the end-all be-all of rural EDC, but it's definitely a step in the right direction in terms of miniaturizing accuracy and firepower, in this case relative to an AR-15 platform. And so it's something that I wanted to take a look at in the vein of primary weapons for rural EDC. So let's take a closer look at what we've got here. This is just a standard AR-15 pistol lower receiver with a bufferless upper on it. Specifically, this is the Foxtrot Mike bufferless upper, which is one of the more affordable options, but also one of the better designed ones, in my opinion. That said, one design detail that they kind of missed was securing the handguard with a couple of socket head cap screws that would really tear up my hand when I was holding the gun like this. And so I went ahead and replaced the original screws with some button head screws that have a much lower profile and are much more comfortable when I'm holding the gun. I also went ahead and flipped over the charging handle, which is designed to be reversible and provides a lower profile, but still good access in this position. Of course, as you can see, I've put a sling on the gun, which provides a convenient way to carry it and also gives me something to push out against and help stabilize it when I'm shooting. And for a muzzle device, you may have noticed that I've just got a simple thread protector instead of the birdcage flash hider that you would normally find on this upper. Reason for that being that in rural EDC, I'm really not too concerned about flash suppression, but I am concerned about keeping the size of the gun as compact as possible, and so it makes sense to save a couple inches of length by using a thread protector instead of an actual flash suppressor. But the most unique feature of this build is the scout scope that I've mounted at a 45-degree offset using custom scope rings so that I can have the scope as low to the bore as physically possible given the geometry of the handguard. And this does a couple of things for me. First off, it keeps the gun more compact, and then it also helps to minimize issues with height over bore, which I've discussed in a previous episode. So in use, I'm going to rotate the gun 45 degrees to look through the scope. So the first question is, how's the practical accuracy? Can I actually hit stuff with this gun? So to that end, I've got some little 2-inch by 4-inch steel targets hanging from frames at 25, 50, and 100 yards. Let's see if I can hit them. That's 3 for 3 on the 25-yard target. So with the 50-yard target, I found it expedient to sort of lean against that wall of the range so that I could hold my body steadier. But I was able to hit the 50-yard target consistently, and I mean, really, that 2-inch by 4-inch steel is a pretty small target to be shooting at that distance with a handgun. For the 100-yard target, I think I'm going to try hunkering down into sort of a military squat position to see if I can be more stable. Well, I hit it. Hit it again. And again. So I'm pretty satisfied with the practical accuracy. I mean, on a squirrel-sized target out to 100 yards, my ability to hit it was clearly limited only by my ability to hold the gun steady enough to keep it on target. I was able to hit the target consistently out to 100 yards, and with more practice, that would become even easier and more consistent. So I think the accuracy is acceptable. Next question is it powerful enough? Well, admittedly, the 223 cartridge is probably not ideal for rural EDC, but it's not totally powerless either. So just for fun, I've got a couple of gallon jugs of water set up downrange with a piece of concrete block between them. Let's just shoot that target and see what happens to get a better intuitive feel for what we can expect out of a 223 from a relatively short barrel like this. Well, I'm actually kind of impressed. Bullet, of course, went right through the first jug. We've got a small entry hole and a much larger exit hole. Went right through the concrete block, shattering it on the way through, and then blasted into the second jug with enough energy to split it open and, of course, fill it with fragments of the concrete block. So, yeah, certainly not powerless. I'm sure there are other guns, other calibers that would have vaporized all three, but it's a respectable amount of power being delivered on target. I mean, obviously, this test is not calibrated to any specific real-life scenario, but given what it did to the water jugs and the cement block, it's probably safe to assume that it would also do a fair bit of damage to any kind of threatening predatory animal, both in terms of its ability to damage soft tissue and also its ability to shatter bone. So, administratively at least, the accuracy's not bad, the power's not bad, but what if we want to use this in a more dynamic scenario? How is it for fast action shooting? Well, to test that, I've set up a bunch of gallon jugs down in the trenches, and we're going to see how fast we can sweep the trenches with this thing. For that, I'm going to transfer the camera to the Picatinny rail here so that you can have sort of a first-person shooter perspective. And I will apologize up front for the funny camera angle that you're going to get as I rotate the gun 45 degrees to look through the scope. Well, there you go. It works for that too. I don't think I could have done that run any faster with a regular full-sized AR-15 carbine. I'll admit to being a little out of practice because I've sort of been prioritizing construction over tactical training this summer, but given where my skills are at the moment, I felt like that was a pretty satisfactory run, and I could certainly get faster with more practice. So, in conclusion, I really like this thing. Obviously, it's not a perfect solution, but right now, I feel like it represents pretty close to the state of the art in rural EDC. So, if I find something better, I'll let you know. But until then, thank you for watching the Idahoan Show.